We can't do today's conversation without the support of two very important Ifma member companies, C.H. Gunther and Son and Cargill Foodservice. Thank you to C.H. Gunther and thank you to Cargill for your support. The three members of today's conversation are part of the larger Ifma K-12 Food Service Council. You'll see their names here on the screen. All of them contribute equally to conversations, dialogue, and best practices around moving the K-12 segment forward during these challenging times. But we are going to just have three of the members of today's council with us, and to introduce them, I'd like to bring in Karen Stewart. Karen is the non-commercial business development leader for Cargill Foodservice. Karen?
Good morning, Charlie. Thanks for having me. On behalf of Cargill Foodservice, I would like to introduce our three panelists for today's live conversation with members of our Ifma K-12 Food Service Council. First is Betti Wiggins. Betti is Officer of Nutrition Services for the Houston Independent School District. Additionally, Betti is a recipient of the Ifma Silver Plate Award in 2017. Second is Dan Ellnor. Dan is the Assistant Director of Nutrition Service Center for the Jefferson County Public School System in Kentucky. And third is Adam Russo. Adam is the Director of School Food and Nutrition Services for the Prince William County Schools in Virginia. Additionally, Adam is past chair of the Ifma K-12 Food Service Council. Welcome to all three of you, and thank you for being part of today's panel.
And thank you to Cargill Foodservice and Karen Stewart for that introduction. So welcome to the three of you. You already know what the topics are for today's conversation, but our audience does not. And just to give our audience a sense of what we're going to do here before I turn the PowerPoint off. First, we're going to talk really briefly about what's it like for kids at K-12 schools that are dining right now. And then what we're really going to do is spend the bulk of today talking about what's going to be the new dining experience for students in the K-12 segment as they are, we return to some version of normality after what's happened in 2020. We know there are a lot of suppliers on today's call, so we are going to talk a little bit about supplier collaboration. And then the three panelists that we have today are going to share the council plans for 2021. And like I said before, we will also be taking your questions. All right, so this is where we turn the PowerPoint off and we really begin to focus on having a conversation with these three esteemed members of today's panel. And Adam, I want to start with you. And can you give us a sense, and I know you can only represent your school district, but you've been on the council calls for the last 12 months. What's it like for people in your position right now?
Sure. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Ifma, for having us. First, I'd be remiss to not mention, I think you had the slide up earlier of our council and our first chair right now, Spencer Taylor. Right now, our whole entire workforce, I think, is being recognized as the frontline heroes that they've been for all the years. But that rings even more true for our friend Spencer, because Spencer is actually pulling double duty right now, because Spencer is a registered dietitian for the Army Reserves, and he has been called over to Kuwait. So he is overseas right now. You can imagine what that is. So all of us on the council, all of his friends, compatriots really are thinking of him. So first and foremost, to Spencer, I know the Ifma team's thinking of him too. They sent a nice little care package. We're all very thankful for that as well. Jessica Shelley from Cincinnati Public has stepped up in his place because Spence is coming back in August. But really first and foremost was thinking of Spencer, especially today, Martin Luther King Jr., the holiday, just thinking of our friend, honestly. Next, you asked me to set the table for what the industry looks like right now. I mentioned before, our folks are being viewed as the heroes they are, because they are. We transitioned at the beginning of the pandemic to a little bit different of a style, right? We've always fed in schools, and that's how we've done our business, right? We went from a 5-compartment tray to something completely different, serving outside of our school building, something we've never done before. From that transition, I think a lot of us learned a lot. And from March until the summer, we took our lumps and learned. On our council, we learned a lot. a lot of best practices, learned from each other, found some product innovations from these calls from different avenues, and really leaned on each other for some opportunities. Into the summer, a lot of uncertainty, really not knowing what was going to happen with schools, right? There's a lot of political pieces, a lot of economic pieces, a lot of industrial, supply chain, distribution, everything you can think of. And it's circle of control, circle of influence. And quite frankly, we had no control. And so I think all three of us on this call and most of our peers in the 100,000 schools across the country had no real control what the first day of school was going to look like. Thus, size relative to institution, what we always are, right? We're food in schools. We had to react always. So you had some school divisions, their departments had the opportunity to be part of the planning. They had a seat at the table, as it were. They were able to shape some of the narrative, get their positions out, be a part of a solution proactively rather than having to completely react. And quite frankly, for what we are, we're a daily business that functions in a quarterly, semester, yearly grade book business, right? They get bestowed upon allocated budgets. We earn day by day by day, sale by sale by sale. And that's completely different. Now our captive audience is at home. The majority of our business, the way it was created, it's a free and reduced lunch system. It was created for our most vulnerable students who now were at home because of a pandemic. How do you reach those students? How do you get the reimbursement rates? How do you safely serve meals? Not just for your students, safe consumable meals, right? Dan, the former health inspector, but safe for your staff, right? How can you safely have your staff in these kitchens to do these jobs? And so we did. We leaned on our partners. We leaned on our expertises. And then that's what happened. A lot of us reacted. The first day of school was the first day of school. In Virginia, some of us went to school. In other parts of the country, they never went to school. Some parts of the country, they went back completely. So you had really a gamut of things that could have happened, but really operators fell into two pots. I would say 2/3 of operators are operating in the loss column. They're really reacting, and they're not in front of the wave yet, right? They're getting beat up by the wave still, and it's just happening. A decision here, smash. A decision there, smash. And before you can stand up, it's another one that's coming. With lots of big buying decisions, sometimes unionized workforces and other political decisions that are pushing some of these drivers. Then you have the other 1/3 that are doing incredibly well, that had the opportunity to have that seat at the table. I am lucky enough to be a part of that 1/3. We had a seat at the table. I say it all the time. My superintendent, Dr. Stephen Waltz, he's one of the longest tenured superintendents for a division of our size in the country, 17 years. And he is a proactive thinker with infrastructure in mind, and very much cares for our program. So we very much drove what our program was going to look like. And now we're in a position where we were very aggressive. We've been handing out grocery kits. In fact, we'll hand out grocery kits tomorrow to about 25 to 30,000 students, 7 days worth of food, 4 meals a day, meal equivalents. So the equivalent of about 500,000 to 750,000 meals will be handed out in the period of 6 hours. So that consolidated effort is a big deal. That's where we're getting our economies of scale back, right? That we lost by losing our student base. So that's kind of a picture of where we are, how we've gotten there. Again, I think I'm very, very blessed to be part of the 1/3, and it's not because of luck or anything. It's because of our system, right? We have a system that really, really values food, and they really value the whole student. My superintendent says it all the time: Maslow before Bloom. And it's very, very true. You cannot be your best self. You cannot be ready to learn if you are just plain hungry, right? And so that's what we do, is we take care of that. And so we're very lucky in that regard. And so that's kind of where we are. I'm going to pass it over to Dan to kind of give you an idea, maybe where things are headed with the guidelines, and maybe another viewpoint.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. He's absolutely right. It's a diaspora across the United States, and it really doesn't matter what size you are. As he said, it matters on local control. So what superintendents boards have made, that's the slice of pie that we get to partake from. So yeah, some of us are fortunate, some of us aren't. One of the biggest questions, Charlie, has been where is the legislation going? So for those of you who don't know, most school nutrition, not all, but most in the United States, is governed by authorizing congressional legislation. And so that happens about every 5 years. We call it child nutrition reauthorization. The last time Congress took that up, they open up the law and they try to make improvements to it. was 2010, the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act. You might say that was longer than 5 years ago. You are correct. They did not have the votes in the onslaught of years to open the law back up, and so that we've been under continuing resolutions to stay operating. Things shifted about 4 years ago, I think everybody knows, and with that administration coming in, they decided that they wanted to make some changes to that law since Congress was not going to make those changes. So they took under their authority through USDA and made some changes to the nutrition standards. Now, the 2010 Act made some significant changes, primarily for manufacturers, are sodium and whole grains. There were a lot of other changes, but those are the two key that impacted most manufacturers. And so over a number of years, we started making changes to our menus and our offerings. That all flipped again when the new administration came in and started changing those up. Of course, anytime that happens, operators as well as manufacturers are thrown to the wind. What are we going to do? What do we need to buy? What do we need to make? And so we've been operating under those flexibilities or rollbacks, depending on how you want to look at it, for the last 4 years. The question is, now that the administration has changed again, and now that we have both houses and the executive branch all under one government, what's that going to do going forward? Well, I can tell you the big question is, number one, what's going to happen with the flexibilities? The timing's off right now to have anything immediate happen. Most everybody has already gone to bid or in bid process for the 21-22 school year. So I can tell you, I don't think we're going to see huge amounts of changes simply because of federal procurement. Now, we're likely to see some small ones, but it's not going to be able to happen for a lot of folks until the next bid cycle. Now, everybody did not change everything just because they were given flexibilities. Everybody didn't take advantage of those. So those that didn't take advantage of them and were still operating under the previous guidelines are going to be fine. So they're going to be able to continue on. My particular school district, we've only got two things, biscuits and pasta, because those were rejected by our consumers as not being palatable. And so we took advantage of those two as an opportunity. Sodium levels, we have not changed. And so we'll be completely fine as far as that goes. Now, that's in the immediate term. The question is, what about child nutrition reauthorization going forward? Well, I can tell you, we're being told it's probably going to be robust. But again, whenever this happens, and this happens every 5 years, and so we're used to this, they'll have to enact the legislation, they'll have to pass it, then USDA is going to have to interpret it, get comment on it, and then get a final rule out. And then once that happens, then they're going to have to extend it, usually for a year or two, to implement all of the regulations, because again, supply chain doesn't flip on a dollar, right? And so I would say to our manufacturers, number one, get your R&D departments already thinking ahead. Number two, pull out those low sodium recipes and look at those whole grain items again, because they're definitely going to be coming with Vilsack again. Now, one other item that I'll mention is the dietary guidelines for Americans. This is something that came up a number of years ago and heavily influences child nutrition reauthorization. The most current guidelines, and we all just got to look at these a few months ago, appear to have two things that are going to be key, I think, in this new legislation going in. One is nutrition-dense foods. I always like to say nutritionally dense foods are items that are harder to digest and chew. So they have a higher degree of fiber, and so those are going to be something that's probably going to be in the law. The second one for manufacturers to focus in on is 10% added sugars is going to be a concentration point for children. So they're not looking for children to have more than 10% of added sugars in their diet. This is going to significantly change things because unfortunately the politicians and the dietitians don't match up. So a number of years ago, back in the 80s, when they demonized fats, as we know, SnackWell days, right? They didn't change the calorie requirements. So we get our calories in our diets from only two places, fats and carbohydrates. So when people say, oh, there's too much sugar in school lunch, it's because you have to have so many calories. And so they dropped the fat component, and now you've got a juxtaposition that doesn't quite match up. Now they're talking about added sugars. So we're probably going to see another juxtaposition, which it will be interesting to see how industry reacts to that. So Betti, I'm going to throw it off to you. Where's your crystal ball?
Well, my crystal ball is right now, I thank God for that, the guidance that allowed us to have a white flour tortilla and a biscuit. I'm in the South. So that whole grain biscuit wasn't making it down here, but when we got that biscuit, my participation shot up. And when I got that white flour tortilla, ooh, my God, breakfast tacos and a whole bunch of stuff is going on. Where I see it now for our manufacturers who indeed are our partners, couldn't do it without you guys. I know you're hurting now, just like we are. I know you're hurting. I've had a couple of my local manufacturers local vendors who depended upon me to go out of business because I wasn't there. I wasn't there for that 46 million meals that he depended on. So where I see you guys going and in the collaboration is that while Dan painted he painted an accurate picture, I'm more pragmatic. I don't think it'll be in the best interest of this current administration to change too much. Yeah. They're not in like Flair, they only got 2 years, and I don't see them fussing around with us for a couple of years. And then we also have to change the outlook. You talk about that 10% added sugar. I remember our biggest problem was we used to throw sugar packs or jelly up on the trays to try to get the calories up, because I'm tired of them treating this child nutrition program like a therapeutic program instead of a feeding program, which it is. We are a limited service restaurant, and we look to you manufacturers to give us products for that. I think that we're going to change. We're going to have the elementary kids forced back in the line. You guys are going to be there with your standard products and everything. But when you get to those high school kids, and this whole thing with this pandemic, and I don't think they're going to be rushing back to our lines. I just don't think they are. And so we're going to turn the manufacturers to be more creative. I see more kiosks. I see more grab and go. Right now, during this pandemic, my dietitians changed our menu. That I'm using more products that I can get that you normally wouldn't see in school lunch. For number one, for taste, handling, they're easier to handle. And then we also had to change non-food items like boxes and all the kind of supplies that we bought. I spent a whole lot of money this year on boxes. I don't know about my colleagues, but the boxes and you got to put a box inside a box. I've got a plasticware. I've got a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't have before in order to feed my kids. And so that helped manufacturers in terms of their business as well as distributors. Because one of my distributors said to me, when you switch those boxes, somebody was able to start up a line. So again, it's about a partnership. I don't know what else we can do. I think you need to be more vocal than what you are. Or maybe I don't even know how vocal you are, but I think you need to be up there on the hill with us talking about that this is a feeding program and not a therapeutic program, and let the pediatricians go back to their office and give them vaccinations and do whatever they do. We feed children. We're limited service restaurants. But one of the things that Adam Russo taught me, he taught me that we're limited service restaurants. So I changed my perspective on how I menu and what I do and what kind of menu items I look for. So collaborating with vendors, we've been doing it for years. We have been, so that's not a new thing for us. That's just not new. But what it is that through Ifma, we have seen a greater collaboration, because now you're getting some serious food service directors that are going to look at you as a collaboration. This is not a 50-50 partnership. Let's not even talk about that. It is a collaboration. There's things that you need. There's things that I need. But I see, commodity processing. We're going to have to change some of that. I don't know if Adam processed commodities, but I think Dan does. It's the kind of products that we're seeing. We got to get a little bit more sophisticated. Our kids' palates are a little bit more sophisticated, that we've been dumbing down. I want kids to have more of a consumer relationship with their food. So
Well, I think to your point, Betty, and to Dan's point earlier, sorry if I interrupt, is we do the commodity processing. We've put so much more money into the whole foods and the fresh fruits. That way we could lean on the commercial aspect for center of the plate, honestly. And so I'm utilizing my commodities for the edges, and then I'm leaning on my commercial partners for that center of the plate. And I realize that's my business model. It might vary across the country, but I think a lot of people are going to shift that way because the commodity game is becoming so compartmentalized for a lot of school divisions. And so I think that will maybe create another avenue for people to look at things a little bit differently. And then even more to Dan's point, with the dietary guidelines shifting and the reduction in sodium potential and sugars, I think that people, and Betty alluded to it earlier, they're going to be looking for more restaurant quality base food. And what I mean by that is your standard fare. I want a pot roast that I can make Adam's pot roast, right? There's a great sous vide place in Loudoun County that makes us a chicken roast. That's just a plain chicken roast, nothing in it, right? They do a great job. And then we add our flavor, and our kids, as far as they're concerned, it's our chicken, right? And it's a boil in a bag product for us. And it's very easy to throw in a combi or a kettle or a steamer when you're a commercial food service like we are. But it also maintains that very, very low nutritional aspect of the sodium and sugar. And then we can play with it and add sauces or accoutrements, to get to where Betty is saying, I want flavor in my food. I want fresh cilantro, and I want lime and lemon and life, right? And that's what we're looking for. And I think a lot of us, and when we're talking crystal ball, it's more indigenous, more ethnic food. It's more things that, Betty's talking white flour tortillas. Forget that. Let's make it out of corn, right? Like we can do that. That beats the whole grain out of the water. And I get one out of a local guy. He's 20 miles from us. He makes us flat, tortillas and chips fresh. They come to us warm. They're so darn good.
And I'll say that's a great point, because what I like to say is all food is local, all food is culture. And so when you talk to legislators, you need to get them to realize that, because when you're trying to do a national legislation, you've got grits and you've got pierogies and you've got salmon and you got tortillas all the way across the country. And you've got to write a legislation that goes for everything. And what people need to keep in mind is we don't just get paid to do what we do. We only get paid if a student selects a meal. A student selects a meal is when it's tasty and when it's wholesome and when it looks good. And so we are a regular restaurant.
That's what I tell people all the time. I'm not in the nutrition business. I'm in the participation business. I drive participation so that I can buy nutrition. So if I'm feeding garbage cans or raking half the food into a garbage can, that's not very helpful. So we all the time have to be very sensitive to our customer and what our customers want. I tell you, I'm just a fundamental believer. We're going to drive them K-5s right into that line. We're going to do something that their parents would approve of and what's tasty to them. So we're going to have the chicken nuggets and the hot dogs and yada, yada, yada. But when you start going up that K-12 chain and you start hitting some of these kids, I'm getting scared for middle school kids now because they're different. They're consumers. These people have debit cards. So, I've got to treat them with some respect. I just can't shove them into those straight lines. So right now I have a team of people. I have a dietitian, an area manager, and my chef saying, how can we serve these kids differently? And right now I'm on a code of silence because I'm doing something with a bid, so I can't talk about that much. But that's where I see things changing. And I actually, it's a grand opportunity as I've learned from working on this advisory board, if we're treated like limited service restaurants, and that our menu, one of the things that we're talking about for our menu is not changing it every day. Not changing it, I mean, not having a cycle menu, absolutely putting it up there on the wall and say, this is what you get. And there's going to be, everything. The kids and the kids can order on a pad. And when they come down to the line, these are high school kids now. They can pick up their meal. It's just a whole bunch of technology. It's going to be so important. And then we're going to be doing customer surveys after every meal. Did you like it? We're doing so. We have to retrain our staff as well because school lunch ain't what it used to be. And this pandemic has shown us that we're going to change. And the only way we can change is in collaboration with vendors, because I'm not manufacturing or plucking any chickens or, doing any of those things. You guys are. You guys are. And then we all have to be aware of price point. Let's not get crazy. Price point. I still only get that little bit of money. None of my customers walk to my cash register, pay me for a meal, and tell me to keep change. So so be aware of that as well. And again, I think what Dan was talking about the regulations. Yeah, you got to look at them, Dan. I'm trying to ignore the regulations.
I don't think we're going to see wheels down on anything before 2024. So, we're going to be going through the process until then, but things won't hit the road until 2024. So we've got some time. What are we looking for, you thinking?
Yeah, we're not going to get a new act in these next 2 years. We're not going to do it. They're not going to be focusing on it. I love continuing resolutions. At least I know what I got. As opposed
Betti, and I agree with you, Betti. When you said the part about what our kids expect, we had talked about it before about table stakes. There's 320 people on this call. I'm sure lots of people have kids, grandkids, and it's all our faults, right? You could be anything, right? Reach for the moon. We gave them everything, every little thing like avocado toast and all these things. We created the food culture that exists. People take pictures on Instagram of like, my wife made them, the hot chocolate bombs and the croissant things, and everybody does it. Our kids are pros. Like, our kids come into our kitchens and they don't want broccoli, they want broccolini, right? Like they have expectations. And I think that sometimes we don't do, as operators, don't do a good enough job telling our manufacturers just how sophisticated the palates of their customers are. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we've had a lot of fun on these councils, right? Like, we have a lot of chance to collaborate with the other councils. And I always tease with like Rafi and the other guys on the college, or, Lisa on the small chains. But, we're kind of, you created them to us, right? And you nurtured them. And then we kind of gave them what you told them they wanted and kind of nurtured them along, and then got them to college and the small businesses. But they want fresh food and they want it kind of made for them. It's the very much me generation, right? They want mine personalized, and not Dan's and not Betty's and Charlie's, but Adam's. I'm a beautiful.
They don't want to think anybody touched their food at all, ever.
Exactly. But they also have an expectation that it was handled with care, and that the people handled it with care, and it was bought on humane farms and all these other pieces of the puzzle, that things they don't even understand fully, quite frankly, when we're talking about 10, 12, 11-year-olds, right? But this is our consumer. These are the things they want to know. We have kids asking us if we're serving grass-fed beef, guys. And that isn't something that I think I would have said 5 years ago, honestly. But, my kids are there. They're trying to be on Chopped Junior and all those things as well, right? And so it's a really neat thing for us, but it's also quite the challenge, because while you do have this group of students, and it's what the 80-20 rule, right, Dan? We don't know what percentage of our students are foodies and what percentage of our students are the food insecure, right? And we have an idea of the food insecure because of applications, less so this year because everyone is food insecure during the pandemic. But the idea that I don't know that if I offer this amazing street taco, to Betty's point earlier, is that accessible to all of my students? Because ultimately, if I don't offer an accessible meal, are there students that are going to go without? Because I think that's the other side of the coin that we always need to talk about when we talk about our meal programs and I'm guilty of it. Sometimes we get a little too fancy, right? We try to be a little too cool for school, like, for a school pun there.
It's a matter of equality.
Exactly.
It's a matter of equality.
Not equality, guys. Equity.
Equity.
Not equality. Equity. I just want those kids to have the same opportunity. I have a dilemma here. I have River Oaks. If anybody knows anything about Houston, I have River Oaks, and then I have the Energy Court, and I got all these fancy kids, but then I have the barrios. Then I have the inner city. So what I have to do is I have to make choices for all my children. And Adam, you're absolutely right. And I'm gonna tell you, just because they're poor, they're not broke. Uncle Sam gives them $8.37 a day coming in that door. That's breakfast, school lunch, and supper for after school activities. So they're not broke. And our problem is that we try to have participation and engage them in our program so that they will leave that $8.33 in our cash register when the bell rings. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys know, we're not small potatoes. I'm $140 million a year in revenue. 60 million of that goes to food. 8 million of it is USDA commodities, which is my clock or credits, but dollars, absolutely, putting dollars on the table. So when you start talking about how you deal with us, you have to come in there and say, treat us the same way, college people. I get, I've gone to some conferences and college people have been there and healthcare people have been there. And then there's a rush of those people when they find out I'm in schools. And then I had a guy who told me, he said, well, just how much revenue you make? I said, 140 million. He said, excuse me? I said, 140 million. That's what I have to do. And all of a sudden, business started turning around saying, honey, I said, I earn it. It's not an appropriation. I am a not-for-profit business located inside of a not-for-profit.
Many years ago, I went to an equipment conference that shall not be named, and I couldn't get anybody to talk to me. And so after I kind of reconnoitered for the first day on the show floor, I went back and I just walked up to somebody and I said, excuse me, I've got 147 franchise locations. Can I look at that dish machine? And yeah, they wanted to talk to me then, and that's it. We're the largest restaurant chain in many states. When you talk about just my district, that's not the state of Kentucky. That's just the district that I operate in. So yeah, absolutely right. We're large and medium cap.
And I've been around a long time. And let me tell you guys, I'm telling these vendors who are on this film, this business is changing. You don't have home economics teachers running it anymore. You don't have people who got their degree in food management running it anymore. You got all kind of restaurant experience. My staff right now, my staff that manage my program, is that I have people who were district managers for chain restaurants. I have people who came out of supply chain management. I have a dietitian that used to work for a for-profit meal packer. And so you should see how I'm holding on to her for dear life, because she's bringing some good stuff into the program. So it's not the same. It's not your mother's program. It's not, it's not. I'll fess up. I'm home economics. That's what I majored in. But I learned along the way that this is not an altruistic program where you got to feed everybody. There's a whole bunch of business to it. And people like Dan didn't exist, but he's so valuable. People with his kind of background, Adam, we'd have never hired you. So you flipped him. So
let me ask you a question.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Culture is changing. And if you look across Ifma, if you look across all the people in Ifma, and you start looking in their backgrounds, you will see a wide array of people who came out of not institutional food like I did, but commercial food, or out of different areas like Dan did, that makes it so important. So understand that. So the kind of people that you're talking to now are not the kind of people who are going to be impressed with a wooden spoon or a pot holder. They're going to want to have real conversations about what is this product, how much does it cost, where's your test data. Don't beta test. You should get beta. It was still beta testing. I learned, don't beta test me. Don't do those kind of things, because the way that you used to market to food service directors, it has changed. I'm just, I think I'm the last of the Mohegans, but it has changed. You got a totally different kind of customer now making decision for kids. So,
all right, I'm gonna jump in here. This has been the easiest panel for me to ever moderate, because I haven't had to say anything the entire time. But there is a question that I think is a subset of what we've been talking about, which is, what is our outlook for the school year 21-22? So let's go on the assumption that kids are going to actually all be able to come back into schools. Vaccinations are going to be pretty widespread. Adam, what are your initial thoughts on, first of all, where are you in the bid process for next year? And then how do you see it maybe being different than previous years?
Sure. So bids for us, commodities, will start rolling and allocated about $3.5 million of U.S. commodities in about a month and a half. And then we'll be finalizing our bid and bid tabulations in another, I don't know, 2 weeks after that, probably. As far as a timeline goes, we're making all of our plans based on what happened at the start of this year. I realize crystal ball and everyone, we don't quite know. In Virginia, we've been upgraded and we're starting to get vaccinations now as educators. And my staff is included in that group. We were included as educators in Virginia. But luckily, the youngest Russo named us lunch teachers and everyone listened, I guess. So we're on the list and we're getting the shots. So our hope is to be in, but we're still going to have, the gear on, and we're still going to be doing all the social distancing. We'll probably be at limited capacity because of the busing and other things. That's still going to be a lot of the concerns for schools, honestly, Charlie, is its capacity when it comes down to it and spacing. And so we're going to be looking at a limited model. I think the one thing we didn't touch on earlier either is that there's going to be a subset of our population that never returns to our schools. There's going to be I have elementary kids that are never going to return to the schools because they're going to use our curriculum rather than homeschool. But high school kids who have a job and now can never come back to school, what percentage of our students will that look like? We have plans to potentially open virtual schools and for all grade levels for that model to meet the needs of our guests, our constituencies. What it will look like for us is, I think I alluded to it earlier, we're pumping a lot more of our commodity dollars into the fresh fruit and vegetable program. That's a DOD program. That way we're going to get a lot more whole fruits in. That way we can count on those products from our partners in the DOD whenever there's been shortages and other things on the fruit and vegetable side, the produce side. DOD's been pretty strong from the buying power standpoint, and so they haven't been impacted as much. And then we're going to lean very heavily on our commercial counterparts for every other component on that tray. So our grain, our center of the plate, and then of course all of the plastics. And I think that's the other last thing for our partners on the call. It's everything that isn't food has become a big deal. And I know that it's the Food Manufacturers Association, but I know we have other partners on here that make things that package and wrap and straws and stuff. And I'm using thank you bags, go bags. Yeah. I mean, out of the moon, the amount of bags we go through. And I think of that will not be changing. The gloves, the safety, the PPE, as we're calling it now, but what used to be just regular old kitchen gear. We change our gloves more frequently now. We have, and we always wore disposable aprons, but we change those more frequently. We're doing things even more frequently than you would because of optics, honestly. And as such, our prices on that plastic stuff is going to be going up. And there's going to be other things where, and I think some of our distributors are on this call as well. I think that's the other one, is relying on our distributors, is because our models are changing, right? Right now, I think most people in the country are running 2 models. Right now, I'm curbside handing out these lunch kits, right? Tomorrow, we're going to hand out just a ton of meals at 30 schools. We're just going to rank out meals. I got 100 schools that are going to be also open, handing out hot meals to kids. We'll hand out about 8,000 hot meals to the kids that come in the buildings. And so we're running 2 competing service styles. What we found is the elasticity model. As we serve more people in the schools, we're serving less people out of schools, right? So we started off serving 30,000 kits and no kids. Then we serve 2,000 kids, 28,000 kits, and and water always finds level. And we feed about 30,000 kids a day, no matter what. But it changes based on where they're coming, who is captive, who is not captive. And so how that changes, how the politicians change those things, and how our boards then react to those things state by state by state. I mean, Dan's in Kentucky next door, Betty's in Texas, which, could be a whole other country other than Florida as far as America is concerned at this point. But what we are all doing is very much different. And so that is the big thing for us. We're trying to aim small and miss small. And so for what that means for me, Betti had said maybe like a fixed menu. And we did that this year, where we went to a weekly menu, and it was fixed because you go to your favorite restaurant and you order the same thing every time you go. Nobody needs that much variety in their life. That's like a made up thing. People like
we're doing the same thing, Adam. We're shrinking our menu for next year. We had a 4-week cycle. We're going to a 2-week cycle for a number of different reasons. One, what you mentioned, like the safety aspect of it, but 2, supply chain. because we can't lock down forecasting for the reasons that you mentioned. That our forecasting is we're going to be about 60-40 hybrid is what we're thinking.
Well, that's why we aim small too, Dan. Is that a similar? Sorry, is that a similar thought to you? Sorry, is we shrunk the menu quite frankly to make it easier for our partners, right? Like we said, hey, bring in a lot of this instead of bringing in a little bit of a lot of stuff. And that's again part of the partnership that Betti alluded to, both with our distributors and our manufacturers, where we might have carried a lot more SKUs previously. We understand the food safety aspect, but also the precious cargo aspect. I mean, everyone's stretched thin. And so I'm wondering if you're thinking the same thing, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I think shortages, rolling shortages, we're going to continue to see for the next 18 to 24 months. I know we've seen a lot of shortages with fresh produce from climate change from 2017. I mean, I can't find broccoli in the stores anymore. And when they talk about the regulations, dark green leafies, where are you going to get those? You know, you got to get them in the back door. And so, and you've got to get something in that the kids will eat. In our district, it's like 5 different districts, right? We could serve sausages and sauerkraut 3 days a week if in some areas of town. Other areas of town wouldn't touch that. We could do pork and collard greens in one area of town. The rest of the area of town won't touch it. So, you know, you've got to serve something that kids recognize. And so
I don't accept that people don't like collard greens. I'm just putting that out there.
Hey guys, the lowly little collard green has such gravitas now. It's just outsold kale. I could not believe that I went in a store and I said, well, these white folks eating collard greens. What is going on here now? And then,
that's the other thing is it's hardy, right? It's like a weed, so it is more resistant to drought and all that kind of stuff. So these are the types of things that I think we need to be looking at. When we talk about future trends, we got to think about supply chain future trends.
But I mean, rice bowl, I mean, the other thing is, I'm telling you, we're talking about changing our limited service restaurant into a limited service restaurant. There will be a menu, and breakfast is over here, and lunch is over here, and all the other time. And that's all that's going to be. It'll help us control inventory, and it'll also help us gauge the students. Right now, the thing that I'm doing, that when you talk about returning back to school, even though everybody gets a vaccination, we've lost 14,000 kids. We don't know where the hell they are. We don't even know where they are, and I don't even think they're going to come back. I don't think they're going to come back. But right now, we're feeding kids in apartment buildings. My catering, I had a large catering department that took a nosedive, and the CFO said, you know, you can't cater anymore. So I said, what am I supposed to do with these people? And he said, well, you have to keep them on the payroll. I said, well, they better work. So we've been serving apartment buildings, actually going out and serving apartment buildings. There's also a lot of fragile children who are at home who need meals because, you know, with special diets and stuff like that. We have to address that. You know, we got to address all the kids. I don't think, even you can vaccinate everybody, I think we're going to have probably a 90-10. There's some kids, and that's the reason your district reacting with the virtual schools and stuff, because everybody's not going to come back. Guys, it's going to take us 5 years to redefine what it is, what is going on. Just like Adam said, we don't have a problem when we come back. We're going to have some 8-year-old first graders.
Yeah. What do you, Betti, Adam, what do you think about self-serve? You know, is self-serve out the door for at least the next couple of years?
I think for the very short term, I think so, especially with our youngest diners, right? I think from an optics standpoint, just like one of the norovirus, or anytime the big flus come around, we always flip the tongs around and have someone serve it, right? Even though we all know that generally that wasn't spreading that way. But again, we also understand how people feel. And ultimately, we're in the trust business, right? And so if families can't trust us, they're not gonna send their kids through the line. And so I am gonna take advantage of a service model where I'm gonna serve the cold aspects just to show that level of care for our families, because I don't want people to have a worry, right? Because that's any little, again, we're a federal entitlement program, guys, like we are, and people have feelings about that on balance before they ever enter the door. And so if I want to get someone through the door, I have to chisel away every barrier to entry that I can. And so if I can get one mom to say, hey, they're doing it pretty safe, then that's one more kid through the line. And generally, one more kid through the line for us actually equals 1.2 children because they influence a future guest, and so that's a big deal for us. A future kid is worth 1.2 kids, and so that's a big thing. And then the other thing, sorry, but I just really want to hit fast. The economics of our business, not ours, but the school business, and that's when Betti talked on the 90-10 part. An enrolled student is about $12,000 to the school division, and then that $12,000 gets funneled out to everybody but us. Buses and books and teachers and things. If they are not enrolled, that's $12,000 missing. And so when Betti says that they have 12,000 students missing times $12,000, you can imagine what the budget missing is from her school division. But that's also 12,000 students who won't be eating captively. And so then when Betti says, are there going to be other avenues to serve them? Could we continue to deliver to apartments and have these things and partnerships? Presently, there's waivers in place that allow that. I don't know that will forever continue. And I don't know that we fully hit that part because generally we used to only operate in our buildings and the occasional rec center and thing on the summers. But now we're like everywhere. We're the Uber Eats of food assistance because the food banks don't have the reach. And we have the manpower. Honestly, the food banks rely on volunteers and we have employees. And so we're able to crank meals out that they quite frankly can't.
We're distributing local charity foods.
Yeah, but I'm the food bank's best partner. You're absolutely right, Adam. They depend upon me to take care of inner Houston. My department works 6 days a week. We have been working 6 days a week. We have big, massive food distributions on Wednesday. On Saturday, we had 5. And even with the vaccination and everything that's happening, there is a greater need and people are coming out. And not only am I feeding Houston proper, I have 12 school districts that have boundaries in Houston. So I'm feeding kids out of other districts and everything. And that's what the waiver allowed us to do. But when we come back, I still, to answer your question, Dan, I wouldn't have self-service with junior high school boys. No, you find more stuff in that food. And that's what you find more stuff in that food that should not be there. I wouldn't have it with high school. I would have little folks before I would have junior high school boys.
In normal times, people do not mess with their food, Betti. Come on. Like, we have beautiful self-service lines. And
it's funny, and they'll be sitting back waiting to see who gets it. But I mean, vendors have, get back on topic and what we were talking about in terms of collaboration with vendors. We will be dependent upon you because we need you to be in business. We need you to be healthy. We need you to be financially healthy so that we can get the service at that price point. And that's something we haven't talked about is that I don't have the same price point as healthcare and colleges. I have a fixed price point or what my center of the plate, what I can put in the center of the plate. Adam talked about DOD, that helps a lot. But one of the things I do, Adam, is I don't use DOD. I have I buy my produce from a produce vendor. I use that money for some other stuff because of the kind of menu that I have. You are more scratch cooking. Dan and I are more what I call a heat dessert.
Well, yeah. we do scratch cooking. We just do it in our central kitchen. And to give you an idea, our center of the plate prior to COVID was about $1.50. And that's just the food. Doesn't mean the labor or the plates.
That's $1.50. You serving steak down there?
I know.
That's the whole tray, Dan. Whole tray, not center. You mean?
That's whole tray. Yeah, that's whole tray. But yeah,
right, I gotta step in here and be the moderator. We have a couple things we need to get taken care of before the top of the hour. So first, I wanted to quickly give you guys a chance to introduce your plans for 2021 as the K-12 Ifma Council. So if you don't mind, just give us a brief sense of what's happening in terms of first the share group committee.
Sure. Our first thing is improve the ability to address challenges on an ongoing basis. That's our first number 1 priority, and it's never been more important than during COVID. And it was the first priority we had when we formed the council. And so we've been meeting bi-monthly throughout this whole process to address these challenges and looking into the next school year, bringing in subject matter experts, and then reporting back out to you, the industry. That's the focus there. What are our opportunities? What are our continued challenges?
What about the USDA Regulations Committee?
I'm not, who's on that? I guess neither one of us are, but we have been trying to talk to the USDA. Oh guys, I got a big announcement for you all. I'm working right now. I don't know if Jim's got it done yet, but an opportunity for us to talk to Stabenow's person, Jackie Schneider. And that's mainly, I got that really because I was Detroit and I'm like, Dan helped me, and Dan Gorman, who's out of, who's upstate. So we're going to have that opportunity to talk to her, because Stabenow will be the chair of the Ag Committee, and she's friendly towards farmers and fresh fruits and vegetables, and anything that's going to sell Michigan's produce into schools. So I still think that the USDA, they're not going to do anything. They're really not going to. I think, huh?
So we
Our
also
USDA,
use
our
Betti
USDA
to talk
committee,
about.
they,
Oops, sorry,
go
Dan.
ahead. I was
no,
gonna say, our USDA committee, basically, you'd ask Charlie, is keeping us all abreast of what's going on in the legislation.
Yeah.
The newest one that came out, the latest care package, had some money in it for us, but I think it was 2023 pages, was buried in the middle of the bill of 5,000 pages.
2032 pages, Dan. Yeah, no, that's what we do.
Was where that was in.
Read through the rules and try to leverage them for everyone's best interest.
Hey guys,
So we read the rules.
Money I'm getting already. I don't know about
we go
you
through
guys,
and say, this is
but
the
I
rules
cut
to
to the
monopoly. Let's play them to the edges. So then, Dan in Kentucky interpreted the rules this way. Jessica interpreted it this way. We all put our heads together, and then we're all making sure that we're playing to the edges, because ultimately that's what we want to do to make sure we're following those rules, but right up to the line to make sure we're offering the very best for our kids.
And being fiscally responsible.
If we have a position paper, because we're coming out with a paper, right? And I would think that the vendors on this line would want a copy of that to see what our thinking is. It could support you in your marketing, it could support you in your lobbying. But what you would have is you would have a document that's been created by some active, energetic food service people from small districts with 2,000 kids all the way up. I think I'm the largest with 214,000. But you got the sweet spot districts, and I call those 20,000 to 50,000. So whatever, it would behoove you not to look at that document when it comes out. And
Right,
even
so
support it.
we've got some questions coming in from the audience that I want to make sure we address, because I promised them that we would answer their questions. So Dan, with all the USDA farm to families box programs, et cetera, do you see or hear anything from the USDA that there will be less commodities available for schools as a result of what happened in 2020?
No, the fact of the matter, and this is what people don't get, we're not necessarily a feeding program. That's the result of our program. We're an economic stimulus program. And that's why it was invented back right after the war, right? Is to inject government money into farmers. And so that's really our farmers, our manufacturers, our distributors. We're an economic development portion. And that's why
they told us they were holding us to harm too, right, Dan?
Right. Yes.
We're getting held. So 2 fiscals ago, guys, just so everyone knows, FY19, your fiscal entitlements will roll. They rolled this year because last year our entitlements are based off of sales year over year. So we served 10 million lunches last year times 35 cents. I get $3.5 million. Really easy math. Well, nobody served as many meals last year, so that money's not there. But they got to get rid of the milk. They got to get rid of all the other American commodity products. So we're being held no harm. So we'll be fiscal 19 year over year over year. This will be the 3rd fiscal we've held it.
But I distribute those family and food boxes, and the next BOA is going to start in March. And what it is, you have a box of produce. It's about an 80-pound box. You have a box of produce, brassicas, cabbage, and no tomatoes, hard stuff, tubers, carrots. And then you have a box of beans and peanut butter and some other items. Yeah, chef's table, thank you. And that's what that family to food box. It's a good box now. Don't get me wrong, it's a very good box. But what happens is, and I'm not afraid about the commodities, because I turned back 16 trucks because I just could not use them. So I don't think this family to food program is going to affect it anyway. And I think it's going to last. I think this last BOA, this is going to be the last BOA. I really do. It's going to be the last one. And it's only 6 weeks.
We still got some more questions coming through, so I'm going to interrupt you, Betti. Sorry.
That's all right.
Adam, if you can give me just like a 10-second answer to a question. Specialty menus, kosher.
Oh, come on. I'm going to time him. I'm going to time him.
Specialty menus, kosher, halal, vegan, vegetarian, still prominent, or yes or no?
Yeah, all of the above. I think a little less from the specifics, right? Like when you're getting down like the alphabet soup of the vegetarianisms and different preferences, but we're still offering a vegetarian entree. As we get back into the buildings, we're going to need to meet those needs. And so kosher for sure, halal meals are definitely, they're there for our demographic where we are. I don't know that that's everywhere.
All right,
no,
Betti,
it's mainstream for us, yeah.
Question for you, Betti. Once again, quick answer, please. With a focus on nutritionally dense foods and meat being much more, do you see yourselves being swayed by this big push on plant-based proteins?
If I can afford it, I would use them. I came out of Detroit where I had 3 days a week plant-based, non-meat, non-protein. I don't think, given my population, that's going to be something they're going to like. No, Miss Betti, I don't think so. I don't want this plant-based hamburger. I think I want the real deal, or taco meat, or any of that. It's going to be.
See it as a limited time offer.
Yeah,
we can spread that throughout the menu. It's probably not going to be a main item.
The price point, guys, the price point. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to afford it.
And then we also have challenging things too, like additives and things. There's nothing about most plant-based center of the plate items that are whole foods. So you've got all of those competing special interests.
On behalf of our whole audience today and the entire Ifma membership, I want to thank Betti Wiggins, Adam Russo, and Dan Ellnor for what I thought was an amazing conversation. You guys blew me away as usual. And the great thing is, this is just the first of 5 conversations we're going to have this week. Tomorrow is colleges and universities, same time every day this week, 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern. Wednesday is business and industry. Thursday, healthcare, including hospitals, senior care, long-term living. And on Friday, we have our small and medium-sized restaurant chain council. 3 members from each council are going to be just like we did today. So tune in each day, put it in your calendars right now that we have that set up. And then on the 26th, Betti Wiggins is a IFMA Silver Plate winner. Nominate one of the people that is part of this council or part of one of the other councils.
Yeah.
And you're really creating a bond with them that is unbreakable once you've nominated them. So crafting a winning nomination. We're going to be having a webinar on that led by Nancy Cruz on the 26th at 11 a.m. Central. And then finally, we have our food service fundamentals class coming up. It's going to include conversation with some of the members of these councils as well. So if you have new people on your team and you want to bring them up to speed on how food service works, make sure to go and sign up and register for this. And lastly, I want to make sure we recognize the amazing sponsorship and generosity from both C.H. Gunther and also from Cargill Food Service. So thank you to both of those companies, and thank you to everyone for listening in today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, Betti. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Jim Green. You guys take care of yourselves. And